Hello and kia ora. My name is Niki Davis. I'm Distinguished Professor of E-Learning here at the University of Canterbury. And this short video is to introduce you to my theoretical framework, which is called the ARENA. It's published in this book about digital technologies and change in education. And the idea of the framework is to provide an overarching theoretical view that would get you past many of the misleading misconceptions there are and help you focus on the co-evolution of digital technologies and education. As I've said, the ARENA is based on human ecology, and within the global ecosphere you can see embedded a national ecozone and also a school and a classroom. These are embedded one within the other. They also overlap. So you can imagine within the global ecosphere there must be thousands, millions, innumerable classrooms really, and schools. And so they are all in there and they can all interact. And that's what makes for evolution, the interaction between these things. Now we're going to take a closer look at the classroom ecosystem, focusing right in on the center of the global ecozone. In education, we often focus on what goes on in the classroom with classroom management. And you'll be familiar with the fact that it's the teacher that organizes and manages a classroom. That's one way of thinking about the teacher, the keystone species, the one who has the most influence. It's not to say that they're not student-centered, so the teacher adapts depending on what the students need. And for me, they are both different species and they interact. There's also other things in the classroom, non-living matter, most of it, and that might be textbooks or other things, as well as computers. And as we'll see, the computers can also help us reach outside the classroom and make for more interaction. The other thing to remember is that the teacher and the students bring into that classroom habits from the past or indeed their culture. And so the behavior in the classroom is impacted by the culture of the species within it. And think here of culture not necessarily being foreign culture. Everybody has a culture, they have habits, and in human ecology, that's really what we're talking about, habits of people that may come from centuries back or may just be specific to that person or individual. Now we're going to zoom out a bit. You can see more than the classroom, you can see the school, and outside it you can also see there are parents. They're another species in this human ecology. So we have embedded ecosystems, overlapping ecosystems if you like. The funny thing is that the parents have an influence on what goes on in the classroom too. And we'll get an example of that in another video. But for here, of course, what students do in their classroom also depends on what their parents do and what their parents support or even don't support. So the culture that comes into the classroom depends on people that are also outside of it. And for the teacher, the most important influence on their behavior is from the school management. So in turn, the teacher has a keystone species to whom he or she reports, the principal, the head of department, people like that. And so within the, what you might call it, the personnel management of the school, the teacher is not a keystone species, the administrator is. And so it depends on which ecology we're thinking about as to who is the keystone species. And think about homes. Who's the keystone species there? Is it the child or is it the parent? Most likely the parent, isn't it? The adults are the one who try and set the behavior at home. One more thing. Some of the people who are in these ecosystems act as bridges between them. For example, the teacher is a keystone species in their class. They're also a member of the school, and in some cases they work with a team of other teachers. So then they tend to bridge the behavior, what flows between the ecosystems. Similarly, teachers who work with parents at home, maybe parent-teacher meetings, maybe using technology to text home or provide other information, are actually communicating beyond one ecosystem, bridging their influence between, say, the classroom and the home, or between the classroom and the senior management team. And teachers, who are also principals, are particularly strong bridges because they're the two people, and although they act differently in the different ecosystems, they actually are the same person and they modify their behaviour depending which ecosystem they're in. So for example, if a principal comes into a classroom, they're unlikely to disrupt the classroom management by the teacher. Instead, they'll come in respectfully the fact that the teacher is the keystone species there. If the teacher goes into the principal's office, the reverse applies. The teacher will respect the authority of the principal and treat the principal as the keystone species in that context. Now we're looking at the global ecosphere with an additional layer of an ecosystem. This ecosystem is labelled DT for digital technologies. And what's happened is that the teacher has started to use some new digital technologies and is drawing on the cloud really, to bring in some information and to use apps. And because of that, the teacher has brought in things from outside the school and even outside the country. Therefore, the behaviour can change. Indeed, more people can come into the ecosystem, but it's still managed, we hope, by the teacher. On the other hand, if that technology changes, as it could be the company that's in charge, the one who have created and will be continuing to update, or is it evolve their technology? So the app can change even as the teacher is teaching. And that's one reason that we use the term co-evolution. The technology is evolving, the behaviour in the classroom is evolving. And so this overlaid ecosystem is creating additional change. We could call it additional possibilities. And we often think with technology in a positive way, like technology is going to be good, isn't it? But actually, technology can be both good and bad. It could be disruptive. I'm quite sure if you're a teacher, you will have experienced disruption with technology when you expected to use it and then it let you down. So these applications are not all that easy to manage in a classroom, even for a keystone species and an excellent teacher. And we all get used to that in our everyday life. But the possibilities of what can happen really depend on the co-evolution of digital technologies and of education.